Product managers, if you haven't started learning about generative AI, this is the time to do it. Sooner rather than later, you'll be incorporating generative AI based capabilities into your existing products, but you may also be building generative AI products as well. So this is the time for you to start getting ahead of this, understanding the generative AI concepts and really starting to build this into your product portfolio. This will help you be successful as a product manager, but also give you the skills to be a future facing product manager. This time last year, I had zero knowledge of generative AI. Fast forward a year, and I'm leading generative AI product management at one of the world's largest investment banks, and I've also just received my first patent for building a generative AI platform. So right now is the time for you to learn these skills and start incorporating it into your product management portfolio. And hopefully stick around to the end of this video, you'll find out everything you need to know to get started with generative AI, but then also start looking at how to build this into products that you are managing right now. For those of you new to this channel, my name's Tariq. I'm a product and engineering leader at one of the world's largest investment banks. And as I mentioned, I had zero generative AI knowledge a year ago. And fast forward now, I'm fully managing a large global department in generative AI, and we are building these products out for the enterprise, but also for customers. So this is something that is very much here to stay, and it's something that you will be doing as a product manager, and you should start to get the knowledge on. So where do you start? What's the first thing to do if you're thinking about upping your knowledge in generative AI? The first thing you should do is effectively learn the basics, learn the foundations of generative AI. And there are some really cool free courses to do this. I'll link some below. Particularly one that helped me out a lot was Google's free learning pathway for generative AI. Absolutely fantastic course, really gave all of the vocabulary that I needed to start having generative AI conversations. And as a product manager, we all know that communicating and having the right vocabulary is so important when we're embarking on gluing together different types of departments to build products for us. So engineering, design, and our stakeholders in the project management space, or our customers, really understanding a unified language is important. And you have to know the generative AI language. This is everything from the concepts of large language models to prompts and prompt techniques, but then also things like the context window. This may all sound absolute alien to you right now, but by doing these courses, you'll understand the absolute basics of generative AI and enough to know as a product manager, what do you need to do to start getting these capabilities into your products or building brand new products based off them. So you should spend your first week embarking on this generative AI journey of yours as a product manager. Spend your first week doing a lot of the learning for maybe 1 to 2 weeks. It will not take you that long to learn these concepts. They're really quite basic, I think, in terms of what you need to know. I'm not expecting product managers to go into the sort of machine learning depths of these concepts, but really just understanding the high level concepts, how they all fit together. That should take you about a week to do. Really starting to understand the vocabulary that is being used as well, I've mentioned. Once you've got to grips to that, now it starts time to start thinking about how you incorporate some key use cases of generative AI into your products. So number one, the most common one of all, is knowledge bases and querying knowledge bases. So think of your own products. They may have user guides, user manuals, troubleshooting guides, or technical information. You can pump all of this into generative AI models and get really good answers back for your customers. So think about customer support. That's a really good one. If you are generating documents, generative AI can help you do that as well. So if you've got multiple sources of data and you create a report that you do regularly, or you create a report for your customer in your product, that can easily be done with generative AI. So you can take sources of information and create reports. What you can also do is summarize reports and summarize documents as well. So this is all focusing on documents here. This is because it's one of the most easiest use cases for generative AI. But if you have very large documents, you could summarize these and get the highlights of these and get the insights, something that would have taken you a long time to do manually and something that your customers do not have time to do. And you can do this very easily. You may have seen already instances of this taking place in your own day-to-day lives. So if you go on Amazon right now, if you're an Amazon user, you will see that in the review section of Amazon products, there is now a summary of all of the reviews concise summary that is being generated by AI. A generative AI model is reading all of the reviews and coming up with a verdict or a summary concisely of what people are saying about the product. And you can do exactly the same thing for your product sets as well. So there are some really unique ways and things that you can do to start using generative AI in your own products right now. So now that you've got an idea of how you can use generative AI basically, and then you've got all of the key terms and the understanding, the next thing to do is start thinking about the interface. Because the way you need to think about this as a product manager is the AI model is underneath, it's the layer underneath, and what you will build essentially is the UI on top, the user interface or that customer journey that sits on top of it. So this could be an existing product that you've got, or this could also be a brand new product that you're building. But effectively, you now need to start thinking about the nuances of a UI that is incorporating generative AI into that UI. So the UI will have to have some things to make it very clear to the customer, firstly, that you're using AI capabilities. It's really important from a UX perspective to know that the customer is embarking on using AI, that they have some sort of trust in that AI as well, that their data isn't going to be shared. So you need to have all of that messaging in place when you are embarking on using a model, say for example for customer support, or it's taking the customer's data. It's really important that you have that transparency layer there as well. It's also important to know that when you're asking the model to answer questions, the time it takes to respond can sometimes vary depending on the question. So the question could be something that is answered very quickly, or it could take 20 to 30 seconds depending on how intensive the ask is of the AI model. So you have to bear this in mind when you're also building that UI, and when you're looking at that from a customer experience perspective and from a product management perspective, is you need to take that customer on that journey of knowing that the AI is thinking and then it's going to come back with something as well. What also is important to know is that AI and generative AI is non-deterministic in nature. What does this mean? This means effectively that you can ask the same question a few times and you will get different responses. It may give you ultimately the right theme or the right knowledge back, but it will phrase it in different ways and it will not be exactly the same, and that is why it's non-deterministic. So this, as a product manager, opens up a lot of room for, I would say, interpretation, and makes it really hard for us to know, is the AI model doing what we need it to do? The quality is right, the answer is effective and it's fit for purpose. All of these things need to be factored in as a product manager when you're doing testing and you're thinking about releasing these things to customers. Now, the best way to look at how we do this and how we start getting things out to customers quickly and negating any negative impacts of where AI can go a bit wrong here is to start incorporating human feedback. Human intervention is still the number one way that you can gauge AI's effectiveness in your product. So you may want to have a feedback button after a response, or a star rating or something like that, where you can have a thumbs up or thumbs down, so the user or the end user of your product can say, actually, that was completely off, that was not the right answer, or yeah, this has been useful for me. And collating that over time, you can start to see, is this being effective? Is AI being effective for my product? So very important from a UI perspective to start thinking about first letting the user know you're on this AI journey when they are going through their customer journey, but then also the feedback that they can give to say whether it is a good or a bad answer or accurate to their needs. Stemming from this as well is AI ethics and understanding a bit of the landscape around AI ethics. As a product manager, one of your roles and responsibilities is to keep the customer safe, but also to keep transparency with the customer. And whilst you may be embarking on using some of the larger language models out there like GPT or Gemini or Claude, these bigger models, you may also think, well, they have their own bias training and they have their own ethics and diversity of data training, which you can leverage. But you also need to make sure your customer is aware that, you know, the models that are being used are effectively not biased, and that's something that you need to give your confidence to when you're using AI in your products. It's also really important to note that if you are not using one of those bigger models and you're using a smaller model like Llama, which is free, it's one of the few free open source models out there that you can use for free. These models are effectively being morphed and being changed and updated by an incredibly large community. So that comes with its pros and cons as well. And that's something that you need to think about when you're using open source models versus these bigger models that are paid for. Now, we've talked a lot about, as a product manager, the top layer, that customer layer. So you've got this understanding that the customer is going to see AI in their interface, whether it's through chat or whether they're going to use document ingestion and upload documents, or some way in which they are going to interact with the generative AI, most likely in a sort of chat style form. There are some things as a product manager that you have to be aware of now that are going to be new to you, and that's all about the performance, because your product is only as good as it can perform. And now generative AI performance is something that is really an art form in itself. And that's, as a product manager, you'll need to have these conversations with your infrastructure teams within your corporation that you work in or your startup that you work in as a product manager. But effectively, the AI models are going to be hosted somewhere, and they're going to have a bit of a lag or lead time between when the response comes back to the user. And all of this sort of processing power needs to have dedicated resources. So you're going to need dedicated processing power. Gemini and Google models, as well as GPT models and all of the others, they run on what we call GPUs. So GPUs are the graphical processors, effectively. Notoriously, these were built for large gaming and graphical processing, and it's really used in the gaming space a lot for supercomputers and pushing the limits of open world gaming. But effectively, GPUs have the power to help models perform and do the reasoning and also provide the answers back to the user. So GPUs is something that your organization may have to invest in. They may have to invest in having more GPUs available so that they can process the information coming from these models. So it may be something that you do as a product manager. You start helping get that conversation going, but it's very important that you have a stream of work available there that you're aware of that is all about the model performance. As a product manager, you also have to be very aware of costs, and generative AI models cost vary, and they may seem small when you look at it on a per token, and a token is effectively the smallest unit passed to a model. So when you're asking a question, a prompt to the model, that is calculated in size, what is called a token, or the token size. So the bigger the tokens, number of tokens, the bigger the question, and the bigger the context effectively that you passed. But the context and the token size is effectively how this is costed, how AI models are costed. And there are two different sort of models. You can have the pay as you go, where you're literally paying per request, or paying each time the model is being asked to do something. So every time a customer asks a question and such, that will be a pay as you go model. And there's also different models you can have for costing that are provided by the provider. So Google or OpenAI or Microsoft, if you're going via Microsoft to get OpenAI's models. You can do that all with an agreement with them, but you can also do pay as you go. But in terms of costing, it's really important as a product manager to start thinking about how this will impact your business. How will it impact your profits of the product, and how will it impact the operational costs? So over time, yes, a couple of cents here and there for a model being called may actually rack up to a lot when you're having hundreds of thousands or millions of customers using your product and then using AI at the same time as well. But what you can also think about in this is that with the costs, there are some things that you can do to be quite cost effective. So you do not have to use, for example, the latest model of GPT if it is the most expensive one. So if you're doing something that is very basic, very small context, or very simple task, that does not need the power of the newer models. It could be that having a look through all of the models, you can find a cheaper version of that model that can do that task for you. So really starting to think about what model is fit for purpose, for the use case, for the outcome that you want to achieve. If you're doing something very large, very complex, that you probably want one of the newer models to do reasoning on, then that's fair enough. But if you're using that same model to do all of the basic processing for customers, that could be done on a cheaper model, and that's something as a product manager you need to bring that conversation up. You need to bring that to the front of people who are investing in this in your company, your technology leaders, and also in your infrastructure capabilities as well. As a generative AI product manager, what you'll also need to do is start building relationships with your compliance and risk teams. Now, this could be something very new to them. It could be something that they are weary of, and it's a bit of a gray area. But what you need to show is that effectively the risks being low or mitigated when you're using AI. And this is done for a series of things. You can have a lot of test evidence to show that actually the AI model is 90% plus accurate on what you're asking it to do. It could also be that risk and compliance teams want to have evidence or metrics of how AI is being used. You need to put all of this in place as well as a product manager, make sure all of that is available. And you also will need to take steps to make sure you anonymize data where possible, or not use personally identifiable information in models and try to complicate the data privacy of your existing estate, and also how your company manages data privacy. So really think about those things. When you're starting in a generative AI space, it's always better to start with low risk internal use cases. So it may be that to prove a point that you want to use generative AI in your workplace, start with something internal, something low risk. It could be within your own team. It could just be your own team's knowledge base and wanting to just use a model there to help you learn or try and get some knowledge on your existing knowledge base as well. So it's, rather than thinking about doing some really big flashy use case for your customer, it could also be a very good idea to start small and low risk internally, just to prove that AI can help you in a low risk scenario, and then also to give comfort to the compliance and risk teams that you work with internally. It's going to be one of the biggest factors as a product manager that you're going to have to satisfy those requirements, and you're going to have to take them on the journey. And last but very importantly, you need to take everyone in your organization on this generative AI journey. That means using your storytelling capabilities as a product manager to take people on this generative AI journey. So whether that is starting small and doing some small low risk, as we've mentioned, impacts and use cases internally, but then taking everyone on the journey of what is the art of the possible in generative AI. How can this transform the lives of our customers? How can it transform the company internally? You need to be that glue, which you often are as a product manager. You're the glue between different organizational departments. Be that glue in the generative AI journey, working with the infrastructure teams to make sure your models are performant and you've got all the capacity you need, working with the engineering teams to make sure they can build on top of the models exactly what you need to, and then the design teams to give that design a customer experience focus for generative AI capabilities, and also with the risk and compliance teams. But effectively, you need to bridge all of these teams together and tell that story about how generative AI can really transform the lives of your customers, but also decrease costs internally as well. So really important for you to remember that your storytelling capabilities really come to the front when a new technology like this comes into the market. As a product manager, you can set yourself up for success to be forward facing, give you new skills, but also promote yourself in the workplace here by using some new technology that is actually your benefit. So if you've liked this video and you're now on the way to your generative AI journey, I want to hear all about it. Please message, comment below, and we can talk about generative AI in more details in further videos. But really excited to see how you get on, and really want to know how you get on with generative AI as a product manager, and what are the challenges you're facing there as well. I want to do more videos on this, but I'll take steer in terms of feedback and whether this is the right sort of content that you want to see for generative AI. Happy to answer questions on that as well, but really looking forward to going on this journey with product managers and seeing excitingly how you get on in the generative AI space. So for more videos on this channel where I talk about product management, technology, but also becoming a leader in this space and really upping your game to leadership levels, do subscribe and see me in the next one.